I'm Carrie Ann Stout, founder and CEO of Vinco Bar Exam Coaching. And we are continuing our series of interviews with recent bar exam passers who we're very excited for. And today we're going to be talking to Raquel. So she's going to tell us a bit about her bar prep experience and a little bit about her experience specifically working with Vinco. So hello, Raquel. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Thanks, Carrie Ann. I'm doing so great. It's like a high that just doesn't go away. So very, very happy to talk about everything.
Somebody asked me the other day, like, do I ever stop feeling like amazing about this? And I was like, I took the bar exam like 6 years ago and I still feel really pleased with myself whenever I think about passing. So no.
I literally cried this morning, just thinking about it. I'm like, this is so great. I'm a real attorney now. Like, wow.
Yeah. And the other thing I've been hearing is like, I haven't been making any plans for this summer because I was worried if I had to study again, and now I can do stuff.
Yep. I can actually buy things now and not worry about having to like pay for extra weird.
So it's
a huge weight lifted off my shoulders.
Well, we're so happy for you. And so let's just jump into some of these questions that I have. The first one is, when you were looking into, hiring some extra help for the bar, whether you were looking for a coach or a tutor or something else, what was important to you? What were you looking for in that experience at the time you were like, I might want to hire someone? Sure.
So I knew what went wrong for me the first time around. I knew that Barbary didn't do it for me. I'm a student that like one size fits all doesn't work for me. So I knew I needed some sort of individual care and attention. And I figured globally that I could get that from like a coach or a tutor or something different than just your regular like Barbary Kaplan, whatever. So that was my like tier one, like, okay, I need some extra help because clearly this one size fits all thing just wasn't doing it for me. And then I knew where I struggled. And for me, it was the MBE. So I knew what I needed to focus on, and I needed someone to push me along. So it wasn't more so like, I didn't need help learning the material. It was just a matter of like having like an accountability base, and just someone to keep pushing me along, because I was also, I moved out here to New York from Chicago. So I was by myself. And I was scared that I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. So again, just having someone there to kind of push me along and then just like keep me going throughout the process was definitely something I knew I needed.
So kind of like on that, and it almost sounds like you started to describe that concept, is we get questions all the time, like, what's bar exam coaching? Like, I know what tutoring is, I've heard of tutoring, and you just really nicely partially described like the accountability part is a big part of coaching. But we'll talk for a minute sort of about like how you viewed that coaching relationship and how that played out for you.
So I got really lucky in that my coach, I do it
all the time.
I mean, because they become like one and the same, because she provided me with substantive material if I needed it. And it was very like, I didn't need a lot of that, and she knew that. And I got linked up with her because of what I'm thinking it was what I had initially told Carrie Ann, what I knew, like what I'd wanted. So it was like the perfect balance of, hey, how are you doing? Do you need anything? Let me give you some feedback on some of your essays, your MPTs, keep pushing with your MBEs. Here's what you got to do this week. And having that kind of structure that wasn't overbearing was what I needed, because I knew Barbary stressed me the heck out. Like I couldn't, like just having to keep up with like all the little tasks that you're supposed to do every day and not feeling any improvement. Like that to me was so like, it caused so much anxiety.
Yeah.
But being able to see week to week my gradual improvement with not somebody buzzing in my ear or not a little thing, just, I don't know. I know my friends that did this, that did Vinco, we all had varying degrees of like assistance that we needed. Like I was very low maintenance. Others were not so low maintenance, so it was fine.
That's a good way to put it. That's an interesting. I'm sort of sort of thinking like your group's in a little bit of a unique situation where there was like a bunch of you who were utilizing our services who had varying degrees of connectedness to one another, and sort of you got to see, we tell students, you know, it is custom, like you're not going to be doing the same thing as other people, but you were sort of in a unique position where you actually saw that play out. A lot of times our students don't necessarily know each other, but you can kind of almost speak to the fact that we weren't lying. Like it really is like, you're going to have one thing, somebody else is going to have something else. We can turn it up or turn it down based on your needs, which I think does really speak to
the coaching aspect. Yeah, for sure.
And so you mentioned that this was not your first time taking the bar, but it is your last time. That's what matters. So I would love if you could point to one or two things that you did differently this time in terms of like your study plan, your schedule, whatever it is, that you think helped get you across the finish line this time.
So I would say not. So I renewed my Barbary subscription just because, you know, didn't know if it was going to need it or not. I didn't use it at all. What I did instead, I had the Emmanuel book, but actually used the Emmanuel book this time around. And then I had other questions, and I had a friend give me a Kaplan book. So I just had like questions from all different types of sources. And I did a ton of questions, and I had the critical pass cards, which I didn't have the first time around.
Okay.
So just switching up my materials and actually sitting down and learning the material. I found that where I faltered the first time was that I went through almost all the things in Barbary, but I didn't actually sit down and take time to digest the material. So what I hand wrote all my notes out. I took the critical pass cards and I wrote everything out. So just utilizing the materials differently. And understanding. Yeah. So that was kind of like the mechanical end of it, but then mindset wise, I had and Carrie Ann, you know this, the whole handwriting fiasco.
Yes, this is the situation.
Yeah, so that was something that I needed to overcome. And I did. Like, I didn't intend to handwrite when I went into this whole thing, but
just to clarify, so Raquel's talking about that she had missed the deadline to be able to use her laptop on the bar exam, and now had to handwrite the test, and there was nothing that she could do about that. And so that was a big stressor that came up for you kind of early on in bar prep.
Yeah. So getting through that, I know Carrie Ann reached out to me immediately. My coach reached out to me immediately. And it was just like, you know what, like, we hear all these people. I've done this before. We're actually going to, like, I know you and what's his name?
Steve.
You and Steve, like, literally made a video for us of talking about, this is what happens when you handwrite, like, and so mentality and, like, mindset wise, I knew what to expect, one, because I'd already gone through it once.
Right. That makes a difference.
Such a huge difference. And so knowing, I'm like, I can do this. I just have to get it done. And I have to do what I didn't do the last time, because I'm not going to repeat, you know, like you do the same thing. It's insanity or whatever. So I knew that I had to change something, and I knew I had to stay focused in a way that, like I could not be shaken no matter what, because all the fear and anxiety was gone. I had already done it before. Like, I knew what to expect. So,
yeah, and those are big changes, like incorporating different ways that you use the materials, changes to your mindset, like that kind of encompasses all the things in one statement. And, you know, you bring up some, I think, important points that I want to highlight with the big Barbie companies. Like, we as coaches and as separate and apart from them, we have no beef with bar prep companies. Like, their materials are good. Like, sometimes people are like, oh, you must dislike, you know, Kaplan, Barbie, whatever. No, we love them. We have no problem with them. But their materials are great. The problem we see is in students being able to translate that into their specific needs, which is like, that's not their job, right? Like, that's not what students are paying them to do. So I think pointing that was a shift for you is really important for maybe someone going into it the first time thinking like, oh, I have these materials, the materials are fine, but what extra step do I need to take to make them work for me?
Yeah.
And then obviously the mindset stuff's always huge.
For sure. And like I said at the beginning, like, the one size fits all thing doesn't usually work for me. So even in law school, I had to figure out my own ways to learn the material. I mean, everyone does. You develop your own style and like your own learning, whatever. And I completely abandoned that the first time around. And
I was just going to say that. I was like, most people do go through that learning curve in law school and figure out what works. And then they get to bar prep and they get the information from the company and everything they learned about how they learn goes out the window. Isn't that interesting?
Exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And I'm over here like, when did I sit down with this material? Because I can't remember. There was no time in the year. You'll be surprised. You'll be like, oh, I'm studying. I'm sitting here for 10 hours a day. But I didn't learn anything. Like, what is going on? And I didn't get that feeling at all the second time around because I knew how I learned and like I knew what I needed to do to make sure I understood the material so that when I did walk into that exam, I was confident and I was comfortable. And I was like, and people are like, like I walked out of that thing and I was so scared. I totally failed. I walked out of that thing. I'm like, I got this. Like, it's good. I'm fine. And I'm like,
that's something that only a repeat taker can really say though, because what I find is like first time takers, whether they got like a 300 or a 200, which is a big difference, right? Everyone feels awful after the first time you take the bar exam.
Yes.
But a repeat taker can kind of has that sense of like, oh, I know what being underprepared really felt like. I know what that was. So I know the difference.
Literally.
And sort of on that, like in that same vein, if you had someone come up to you now who was going to be taking the bar for the first time, say, and they were like, hey, you did it. Like, what's super important? If you could give me like one piece of advice or two pieces of advice, like what would you say to that student?
Do not abandon your law school methods of learning. I promise you, if I had done that the first time around, I would have passed the first time without a doubt. And like, if you find that your bar prep company isn't working, don't freak out. I found, and if you need to fall back on something, here's the other piece of advice. Get the critical pass cards.
You love those. I mean, they're great. We love critical pass.
Everything you need, and then a little some. Like it was perfect. It was enough that you get and understand, like if you have issues with the material, you can easily look to those as like a nice, like short and sweet, this is what it is. And you can get through it. I promise it'll be fine.
Don't abandon what you know about yourself. And then don't be afraid if you are running into feeling like, oh, what I'm doing with bar prep isn't working, like don't freeze, problem solve, look for other resources. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And so my last question is, again, because part of the idea of doing these calls with you guys, in addition to celebrating, because we're very excited, is to give people an idea of sort of what it's like to work with us. So what would you say was your, favorite part of having a Vinco coach?
Ooh, I loved our weekly calls. Like it's good. I mean, I'm cooped up in my apartment all week and I like hardly have human contact. So to be able to sit down both on Saturday with you and then whatever day of the week would work for our schedules with my coach, it was just like a good kind of like, you're going to get through the rest of this week. You're going to keep going. And there were nice check-ins. Like, and I think it was best for my mental health, at least.
Like that push.
Yeah. And even substantively, like our calls on the weekend, like they weren't crazy in depth, but it like helped reinforce some of the things that I'd already learned. And then just like applying, seeing it in application, like with the essays. And so it was all around very just, it got me through. I could not have done it by myself. Like, I don't think I wouldn't have come out as healthy, I guess.
Well, I think that's a good point. Is sometimes I do feel like, or some of our students, like, could they have done it without us? Like, sure, I don't think we're magic. Like, I have no problem. Like, I'm gonna post this online, and here I am saying, like, I don't think that Vinco has like a magic pill or magic fairy dust, but our motto is that we help students pass the bar with less stress and more confidence. And so the pass the bar part, maybe some students could do that without us, maybe some couldn't, but that with less stress and more confidence part, like that's what we're bringing to the table for everyone. And that's what I'm hearing from you and sort of the way you're talking about it. Like, you maybe knew what you needed to do. You maybe could have gotten through it, but you feel like it was a less sucky experience.
1,000%.
Which is, I think that's
1000%.
an important concept for people to hear. Well, thank you so much for sharing this information with us. It was some great tips. And if you guys out there are interested in learning more about Vinco, you can find us at vincoprep.com. And I'll see you guys in the next interview.